Welcome to the Bulwark podcast. I'm Charlie Sykes. Hey, for those of you that are Bulwark Plus members, I want to tell you about something special we are doing tonight, Thursday night, at 9 o'clock Eastern Time, 8 o'clock Central Time. We're going to be doing another Bulwark Plus exclusive live stream, and it's going to be the team with David Frum, and we are going to be talking about the whole world of Trump election trutherism and where we go. I think it's going to be a very, very interesting conversation. We are in the midst of some genuinely crazy stuff. So if you are a member of Bulwark Plus, or if you sign up between now and then, you'll be able to participate in this live stream. They've been extremely well received, and we're very much looking forward to that. Before
And
we
I'll be
get it,
there, and
yeah.
I might have a drink.
Tim Miller, you're going to be doing it. Well, of course, it's easy for you because you're like on East Coast time. I mean, on West Coast time. So it's
Yeah, so
early.
I'm the appropriate amount, of a drink and a half in usually for these things, while the folks on the East Coast have to calibrate a little better.
Yeah, well, no, see, in some ways, they're just all they have to do is like finish up the live stream and go to bed
Yeah,
because it's
good
late.
point.
You have a whole day. So there's so much going on right now, including the president's 46 minutes of self-pity, petulance, deceit, and pure bullshit. The most important presidential address ever. Did you watch it?
I
You
did. I
did?
did suffer through it. I fast forwarded a
You're a
couple
martyr.
points because it got boring, but it was I felt obligated to watch it actually
Okay.
because it's we cannot let this just live in a world where he's speaking entirely to his to the crazies and speak entirely to the cult members and have a separate stream of facts. I mean, there's an obligation of folks to watch the
I
president
think
when he's
you
spreading this.
I think you're right, but you're a better person than I am because I could not bring myself to watch it. It there's something still after all this time just profoundly depressing about realizing that the president of the United States right now is the vector of the most dishonest, toxic conspiracy theory bullshit in America today. I mean, we can make fun of Sidney Powell, which I'm going to do, and the drunk witnesses that show up with Rudy Giuliani, but this is the president of the United States who is pushing stuff that if somebody would have come into Vladimir Putin's office and said, "Hey, Vlad, we could really f up America's democratic system if we spread this story and this story and this story," Putin would have said, "No, that's crazy stuff. Get out of here." And he doesn't have to do it because it's Trump. Okay, so before we get into that though, you need to take a moment to realize where we are at. 2,400 Americans died at Pearl Harbor. About 2,977 Americans died on 9/11. Yesterday, 2,885 Americans died of the coronavirus. And the president of the United States is still out there in this self-pitying, whining conspiracy theory. He's not doing anything. He's not addressing this. Yesterday, we hit this milestone of 200,000 new cases. 100,000 Americans are hospitalized. The CDC is saying that more than 19,000 Americans could die the week of Christmas alone, and that by the end of the year, somewhere between, depending on the range, somewhere between 300,000 and 329,000 Americans will have died from the coronavirus. And half the country, Tim, is like going, yeah, well, I'm bored. I just, I just want to get on with it. And Washington's having one Christmas party after another.
I'm over it. Yeah,
Yeah.
Charlie, it's really dispiriting, and I guess I just start by saying I get it. I don't understand the people that are spreading the conspiracy theories, but I understand the fatigue.
Yeah.
It's been
I
a
do
long
too.
time. I've got in-laws I haven't seen in 9 months or whatever who are living too far, on the other side of the country to make it work, and I understand that people get tired of this kind of thing. Like
I
eventually it
do.
wears on you. You try to just it's just human, right? But the fact that but what I don't get is that there just is a complete vacuum of anybody taking a leadership role and trying to rally the country to say, okay, we can survive this thing about 4 more months. Now that's actually not fair. You have Joe Biden that's trying to do
Yeah,
that,
yes.
but it's hard from outside, for as in this sort of lame duck period for him to do it. And of the people who are actually leaders. And again, 98.99999% of the blame here is on Donald Trump. But, we've got here in California, like Gavin Newsom and the mayor of San Francisco going to the most expensive, fanciest restaurant for little parties themselves. And, you've got Mike Pompeo, who weirdly thinks he might be president in 2024, throwing like 9 Christmas parties in the state. Who are going to these like buffet, disgusting Christmas parties in the State Department, by the way? So, across the board, that there is just a complete lack of saying let's call the country to a bit of shared sacrifice here during this Christmas season, right? Like let's try to mitigate this for 3 more months because the good news I saw one estimate yesterday that said we might have 50 million of the vaccines out by February. And that goes a long way
This is
to,
good.
to
Yeah.
yeah, that's good. That goes a long way to getting us close to actual herd immunity,
But
right?
but but
And
we
not
but
the
we have to
fake
get
herd.
from here to there,
Exactly, and that's
and
not
the
that
crazy,
long.
yeah. If we can do that. Now, of course, like, there's just so much that's going on right now, and I said yesterday, I don't know what you've been on Nicole Wallace's show, a bunch this week. It feels like you're on it every day, but,
It's just
um,
because when I go on, it's hot fire, Charlie. I'm
I think
actually
that's
not
what it
on that
is.
much, so
No,
I think
and
it's
because
just
what
that.
happens is it goes viral,
Yeah.
and people go, "Did you get a haircut or is that a ponytail?" There's this debate that breaks out. But I think, the next 60 days are the most dangerous days of the Trump presidency because of the distraction, the violation of norms. I mean, there's no norm that he won't violate. There's no standard of decency he won't shred. And so, while this crisis is spreading, not only is he ignoring it, but he's going to be just throwing up so much chaff, and so many outrages that, we're going to wake up at the end of this and go, "Oh my God, look at the wreckage that's left behind," and it is horrific. I don't know
Yeah, and
what.
just really quick on that, Charlie.
Yeah,
Like the other thing is we've lost. I think maybe because we're out of campaign season, and that people saw this in a campaign frame, which they shouldn't have. But like we've lost again the sense of perspective amount about these deaths. I think maybe
yeah,
the numbers are
right,
getting too big.
right.
But and there's not been a single person in the Trump administration or in media, all of these, coronavirus truther like mini celebrities like Alex Berenson, like none of these people have had a moment and just said, okay, I missed on this one. Like we need to recalibrate our priors on this. Like if you remember I'm sure when I was on this show in April or May, like the standard thought among people who were concerned about this, like Jonathan Last and others who were ringing the bell, was like, there could be about 200,000 deaths, right? Which is going to end up
Mhm.
being a little low, or quite a bit low. Like the Trumpers, the president, these people were saying that there'd be, well, at first zero, but then once it took hold, 50,000. Oh, it'd be really bad if it was 70,000. And there are going to be 4 times as many deaths, 5 times as many deaths as like the high end estimates at the beginning of this thing, and nobody has had a moment where like we're about to talk about. I think with Gabriel Sterling in Georgia, there's been nobody that stepped back and said, "Wait a minute, can we just stop the madness here?" I mean, this is insane. Like if you would have told somebody in March that in November or excuse me, in early December, there'd be a day where there was 2,800 deaths
And people are still
still.
making a joke of it. No, this is an important point because, I've been going, I know you've gone through this as well. We've looked back on a lot of things that we have said and done and went, boy, I was just wrong about that, or I really, really regret that, or what was I thinking when I did this? Or you reread an episode in recent history and you go, I was absolutely on the wrong side of that. But as I pile up all of these regrets, I'm trying to imagine what it would be like to think I was on radio or television giving out information that may have led to people dying. I mean, that's a whole different level. I mean, it's one thing to be wrong about politics, it's one thing to be offensive about politics, but there have been people who have put out information on radio, on television, on the internet that has encouraged people to engage in behavior that has killed thousands of people. And that's not hyperbole. this whole disdain for social distancing, the attacks on the efforts to mitigate this, the tribalization of masks, this has led people to die. And I will tell you, I'm really in a period right now where I'm okay with self-flagellation that, I did this and this is the damage that it caused. But at least I can look back and think, I don't think I killed anybody. So I'm just imagining what that must be like and why no one's going, hey, you know what? I was wrong. And the only thing that I can do to make up for that is to tell you the madness has to stop now.
Yeah, and just to lastly on that point, I watched Kaylee yesterday too. I'm just a glutton for punishment, Charlie. I don't know what happened to me as a child. This is something to spend some time on in therapy. But I watched Kaylee yesterday as well, and she's defiantly talking about how the liberals are not going to stand in the way of our celebration of Christmas and the celebration of the Christmas season, and adamantly and defiantly um, speaking out at yesterday's press conference about how Christmas will not be slowed down or canceled by the left.
It's
And it's just
defiant.
like, it's deranged. It's like, I mean, okay, even if I guess that there's a probably a slightly irresponsible way to think about it, which is like we still want to mark this. We're going to do everything the right way. We're going to cancel the Christmas celebrations, but we'll have some. It's not that. It's like this. It's this death cult madness. Like we're going to go on as normal, just like Jesus would have wanted. It's crazy.
Well, it is crazy, and I mean, I'm like the fact that I'm not going to be seeing my new granddaughter at Christmas.
It
This is a real
sucks.
problem. I mean, I really get. I mean, I'm angry about it. I'm disappointed about it. But this wouldn't be a sign of that it was no tread on me if I decided to get in an airplane or a car to go out there and put my family's life at risk. I mean, that's that mentality is so crazy. So let me tell you what I'm wrestling with. I don't know if it was very early there, but in my newsletter today, I read about the Republican Party as the leopard. What is the exact the
The
phrase
lepers eating
the
faces
leopards
party.
eating the leopards eating people's faces party. It's not like they're going to eat my face. But I also had some thoughts about just hopefulness because I realized that I try, sometimes I'm on these podcasts or on the live streams and I'm the voice of optimism, but I find myself really struggling against it. And what I said was, Bill Kristol's got a great essay about, maybe we're going to have a resurgence of liberal democracy and, centrism and decency and stuff. And I really want that to be true, but it's hard to be optimistic because, what I wrote was when I was young, I used to think of hope as this, many colored bird, elusive but filled with joyful portent, right? Now, when I'm tempted to be hopeful, I think of it as like this guy in a hoodie trying to sell me the same cut rate, crack that he conned me into buying last week. I bought it too many times. I worry I'm getting too cynical about all of this. But hope seems that, oh yeah, it's going to be this next guy who's not going to break your heart. He's not going to crush your soul. He's not going to sell you out. Yes, you're going to put your heart and soul into this scenario only to be disappointed. So it's hard, but I had to cite the late Rabbi Sachs, this brilliant man, Jonathan Sachs, who just died way too young within the last month or two, and he had an interesting way of looking at this. He said, optimism and hope are not the same thing. Optimism is the belief the world is changing for the better. Hope is the belief that together we can make the world better. So what he's saying is that hope requires courage, that optimism's a passive virtue, hope is an active one. So I'm not an optimist, but I'm really struggling to get back to hope. Did that sound
Yeah.
like I was on point or a total
Yeah, it's
digression?
funny, Charlie. I haven't. I just always get called out if I haven't read the newsletter. I'm trying to get a coffee before I can get on the show here this morning. But I was thinking about a similar thing in a more kind of jokey fashion for the article I'm writing for tomorrow, where there was this one of Obama's famous lines was, in the unlikely story of America, there has never been anything false about hope. It's
Yeah.
like, I don't know how well that one aged. That had a nice ring to it at the time. But I don't know
Yeah,
how
the
that I
whole
don't know
arc
how
of
well that
history thing,
I don't know
bending
how well
in
that
in
aged.
one way. Okay, so here's something to be slightly hopeful about is that the leopard eating people's faces party is amazingly biting people. I just what's going on in Georgia is just extraordinary to me. I mean, Lynn Wood telling Republicans there not to vote for Kelly Loeffler or David Perdue because they haven't earned your vote. And then you have Sidney Powell, who may be one of America's worst lawyers, the four-dimensional chess of telling people own the liberals by not voting, this thing of staggering genius. She says, I would encourage all Georgians to make it known that you will not vote at all and thus your vote is secure. She wants a system of signed paper ballots, no Dominion voting machines. So she's basically urging Republicans not to vote in the January 5th runoffs. And now it's occurring to conservatives and Republicans that wait, so these face-eating leopards are actually turning on us now. Like, amazing that if you bring cranks and crackpots and grifters and hacks into your inner circle and raise their national profile, bad things could happen, right? I don't know what did how did they
Yeah.
think this was going to work out? I mean, yeah, it was a big mistake to bring in the Lynn Powells and the Sidney Powells. But what did you think when you actually elected a president who's a crackpot? Who's rose to birtherism, who lied? How did you think this was going to turn out, people?
I wish that I could share your enjoyable Schadenfreude on this in Georgia, but
You're not.
I just can't because these guys haven't been punished. Actually, I mean the leopards haven't eaten their faces yet. I mean Trump's face has gotten eaten, and sadly the people have been victims of the virus and et cetera's faces have gotten eaten. But all these Republicans got reelected. All the rest of them, and I don't we'll see how this sort of debate over between the really insane Lynn Wood and Sidney Powell tribe and the just kind of insane Breitbart tribe like turns out. But I do wonder if it's really just increasing the attention on this runoff, honestly, among right media folks, and it actually just on balance on net helps with turnout. I mean, runoffs are a pure turnout out game. So, anyway, I'm sorry to pop your balloon, but
No, no,
I'm a
you
little
just snuffed out. I had a
skeptical.
little green shoot of hope there, and you just
Yeah,
snuffed it out, man.
sorry, I'm just a little skeptical that David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler's face is going to get eaten by the leopard. But I mean, there is nothing false
There
about hope, Charlie.
there is the hope. See, and here's the problem. If they win, as is likely, this will be read by the Republicans. The way they've read all of this is that
Yeah.
this works. The crazy works. There's no price to be paid for all of this. And let's go right on to Trump 2024.
Are you ready for this? Can we talk about that? Can we talk
Just
about these quotes from 2024?
yeah, 2024. Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Um,
Josh Hawley. I'm sorry. I know you have a special place in your heart for Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio. But isn't Josh Hawley just the most craptacularly creepy member of the Senate right now?
Yeah, he attacked me this week,
Oh, good.
Charlie. Yeah, my content activations have been great. I got I was my ponytail was attacked by a celebrity, and Josh Hawley sent this like nonsense tweet at me about how I was making fun of this sort of notion about all these Republicans from before the election, saying that they were the last, no pun intended, bulwark against the
Mhm.
rising tide of socialism and Marxism in our country if Joe Biden had won the election. And then, like, now that the election's over and Joe Biden is obviously not a socialist or appointing any socialists to his administration, that the new line of attack is that, it's these woke corporate liberals. It's just like, well, wait, why didn't you tell me it was just going to be woke corporate liberals when, before the election? That might have been
Didn't have
more
quite the heft
appetizing.
to it, did it? It's like,
Um, and
we
so
must
I attacked
it's the
Holly
Flight
over that.
93 election because otherwise these corporate liberals.
Right.
No,
So
not the
Holly
same thing.
attacked me over this and said, I don't understand. It was a condescending, I don't have it in front of me,
Yeah.
but some
Let me
condescending thing about
explain.
how you don't understand that the woke corporate liberals are spreading warmed over Marxism. And it's just like, you're
Janet
just
Yellen.
such a phony. It's just all bullshit. Like, what are you even talking about? Like what like Marx is all about this anti-materialism like there were no woke corporate Marxists. Like that's just not a thing. Like you're just spouting buzzwords,
Well, that's
that
true. This is the thing with Hawley. It is like he's got this mad libs of buzzwords, and he just sort of scrambles them up. Black Lives Matter, critical race theory, corporate liberal, and he just sort of throws it out because he wants to, look like one of the kids. Remember, that gif? Have you seen that where the guy is, so kids, this is
yeah, hello fellow kids.
yeah, hello, fellow kids. It's Josh Hawley. Hello, fellow populist, elitist hating folk out there. Let's
Yeah.
talk about
I
corporate
just took
liberal
my
panic.
gap year in London at the elite St. Bart's school or whatever the hell school he went to in London.
Well, he's one of the people quoted in this article as saying what a great idea it would be for the Republican Party to be on hold for 4 years while Donald Trump continues to spin out his trutherism, and then give him another 4 years in power, because that would be so great. And Josh Hawley he's there for it.
Yeah, I pulled them up here, some of these quotes, because I just think it's worth just really bathing in this. Marco Rubio, I will tell you this, if he runs, I think he would clearly be the favorite. I think he would win. So
This is
at
Marco
least
Rubio talking about Donald Trump.
yeah, Donald Trump there. So at least little Marco didn't endorse him in the same way that Hawley did. Hawley said, I would support him running in 2024, and I think he would be the nominee. Rick Scott, I think it'd be great if he ran. Senator Daines of Montana, if he runs in 24, I support him. Senator Graham, I would personally support him if he did. Senator Blackburn, people in Tennessee are very enthusiastic about a second Trump term. I mean, this is madness, Charlie.
This
Like,
is right now where they're watching him try to steal an election, asking the Supreme Court to overturn an election while spreading these wild ass conspiracy theories and encouraging speculation about martial law. And at this moment, all these Republicans are going, "Yeah, this is good. We want more,
sign me up.
more."
Sign me
Yeah,
up for 8 more years of this, honestly. Sign me up for 4 more years of him at the running as the titular head of the party, and then another 4 years of him as the president of the United States. Like 8 more years of Donald Trump? Like what? Like are they not watching him? Charles, I know that we've been over this again and again, and I know
mhm.
these guys aren't models of courage, but the fact that there's not even a group of them, and I'm not talking about we've got the Kinzingers and the Romneys and the Rigglemans and good on them, but I mean the folks who really have a legitimate chance to take over the party, the sort of soft Trumpists, if you will. Like could they not say that here is our opportunity to make this guy look like a pathetic, whining, lying loser?
Here's your
Like before the
exit.
election, everybody said to me, Trump will be a loser. Everybody will see Trump as a loser afterwards.
Mhm.
Yeah. And this is the moment. Could you imagine if after Hillary Clinton lost, she had a sad press conference where she was holding up charts, talking about phony dumps, phony massive dumps that Trump kept talking about? Like it would have been the saddest thing. All of the Own the Libs crowd would have just made fun of her relentlessly forever until the grave. But yet Donald Trump is doing the most pathetic, embarrassing loser behavior that you could possibly imagine, and all these guys are going, heck yeah. I mean, this could be their chance to break free from this.
I
And
I
not
I I
only are
think
they
this is
doing strategic silence, they're like, sign me up for 8 more years.
okay. So let me give you since you crushed my hope before, let me give you a slightly more, well, slightly less dystopian, horrific
Okay,
horror
I
movie
need it.
version of all of this. That this is basically their way of practicing toddler psychology, which is, look, they want to make him stop being crazy. They want to make him not do anything even worse by saying, "Come on, Donald, you can come out. It's going to be okay. We're going to take you to the zoo next week. It's you'll be able to come back. Just come along with us quietly. Don't break anything. Just stop screaming. Come on, get up off the floor. We're going to go to Chuck E. Cheese's next Thursday." This is the best I can.
This strategy, they've been trying this strategy since 2015. So, I mean, okay, I hear you. It could be that.
I
It
know.
could be that. But again, do you have to go that far? You know what I mean? Like when I'm working on that strategy with my toddler, it's not like, hey, we're going to go to Disney World with grandma next week, and then instead, we show up at the library, right? I mean, you try to put the best spin you have on reality. I mean,
Yeah,
they're
but if your
telling him,
toddler
I'm going to support you in 2024. I mean, Josh Hawley's on the record. So
yeah,
is
well,
Steve
okay,
D.
he says that now, but, Josh Hawley says lots of things. So, I mean,
Okay.
it's a little bit like toddler psychology if your toddler is holding a hand grenade.
Okay.
It's
If
like
the
your
toddler's holding
strategy.
a hand grenade, I might promise Disneyland.
Yeah, yeah, you see what I'm saying? It would change your strategy if the toddler's holding the hand grenade and you see that he's, just about to take the pin out. So,
Okay,
you
well, that's
it
all right.
by
That's a
the
good
way,
metaphor.
you can
That
certainly
you've
imagine
sold me, Charlie.
what the conversation with Bill Barr is. I mean, this moment we're in right now where everybody's turning on Bill Barr because he won't back the conspiracy theories, and they're speculating that he might fire Bill Barr. They're speculating he might fire Chris Wray. By the way, I would put even money that the FBI director Chris Wray is not going to make it till January 20th because you know the toddler in chief just won't allow. As soon as Biden made it clear that he would keep him on, would let him, if he survives to January 20th, that Christopher Wray would be able to stay as FBI director. I think that really did put a target on his back, and that Trump is not going to be able to help himself from firing. Well, speaking of weird things, you see the story in the Daily Beast. Mike Pence backs away from the Trump reelection fraud train wreck. And then there's this anonymous quote: "The vice president does not want to go down with this ship and believes much of the legal work has been unhelpful." What's with that? He's the
You
last
bought the
person on
ticket,
earth.
Mike. Take the ride. You're on the ship. You're on the ship. Like I don't.
Too late.
You're on the ship. You're going down with the ship. And I don't. I mean, it is insane, right? He's in there. I think that a lot of these senators, get to live in this sort of world where they genuinely. I mean, it's a shtick that they don't read the tweets, but they genuinely try not to. You know what I mean? I think that a lot of these guys, like, they're reading the Wall Street Journal ed page as their information, and they're getting briefed as necessary by their staffers. And like, besides that, they're watching Fox, which puts the nice sheen on this stuff. And I just think that they're not getting the full crazy. And I don't. Mike Pence is in there, and he's getting the uncut powder.
Well, yeah,
And
he's
so I
getting
think he
he
might
also
be
knows he's
seeing
totally,
just how nuts this stuff
yeah,
is.
he's totally screwed, of course, if there's a 2024 campaign. So let's talk about some of the stuff that we had in the Bulwark this week. We had one of your RVAT, the Republican voters against Trump
Hmm.
stars, named Mark Becker, who was the former chairman of the Republican Party of Brown County here in Wisconsin, which is a key county. I mean, this is Green Bay. It's always been a swing county, and he became a Republican voter against Trump, and then wrote a piece for the Bulwark where he talks about a phone call he had with our good friend Ron Johnson, Senator Ron Johnson, who basically tells Mark, "Yeah, I know Biden won, but I can't say so because that would be political suicide. And yeah, Trump's an asshole, but he's accomplished a lot of all of this." And this got a lot of attention. I see that Johnson's pushed back. That in fact, I've been totally consistent in my public and private statements and labeled the article a political hit piece. No, apparently he hasn't been that consistent in his
Yeah,
public
he
private
deserved to get
statements.
hit. I said when Mark sent that to me afterwards, I said, "Yeah, it was a political hit piece. You deserve to get hit. You were getting
Yeah.
hit for your political hypocrisy and shamelessness and lies." So yeah, look, I think good on Mark. I mean, for me, my big takeaway from this is how many conversations like this have been had the last 3 weeks? Thousands?
Yeah.
And honestly, thousands
Mhm.
with Republican elected officials who are publicly doing the fraud two-step and privately saying, "Okay, we just got to survive this 2 more months. We kept the Senate. Good news. Like, let's just, we can do this." Like, that's what most of these guys are saying. I mean, we are. You see, some of them are kooks. Like, I think Rand Paul has gone all the way in on the fraud trutherism and the massive dumps being illegal and all this stuff. But most of these guys, I think, know the truth. But again, they're using the toddler psychology. and they don't want to say it. They know it is going to hurt them politically. They see, their Twitter mentions, and it's all filled with like MAGA hat people saying, "Why aren't you fighting harder?" And so, if
Oh,
anything, they're
yeah.
thinking about that. Should they be doing what Ted Cruz did and putting out just unconscionably, just pathetic press releases like he did, calling on the
Oh my God.
Pennsylvania election to be overturned?
7 million voters to be
Yeah.
disenfranchised.
So anyway, that's my thing. Is that good on Mark? And the reason why I think it resonated is because everybody knows that this is the case, and people are desperate and thirsting for just being told the truth, right? And like, stop with this BS cosplay, and just own it. Like, own Linwood, own all the craziness, own the drunk lady in Michigan,
Oh,
pretend
we gotta
like you
talk about
really
her.
think that tow trucks worth of hundreds of thousands of ballots came in the dead of night, or
North Korean
be
ships
honest.
came
Yeah.
in with them, didn't they? Isn't Roger Stone saying that North Korean ships brought in ballots?
I know.
Speaking of the drunk woman in Michigan, before we get to all of this, so I got a text last night from a prominent Wisconsin Republican who said basically that Trump has broken people's brains. Just talking about the kinds of communications he's getting with people and how impossible it is to reason with people
They used to
because
say that about us, by the way, Charlie.
yeah, they're just throwing out all of this, the irregularities and suspicion, everything.
Remember
But
TDS? Remember TDS? We were the ones that were turned into deranged over Trump,
yeah,
I guess.
we were the ones.
Hmm.
Well, see, that's one of the things I kind of like about what's happening now is that even the Trumpists are looking and going, those people are really crazy. Wait, this is what we thought about you back then.
Yeah.
Speaking of the drunk woman in Michigan, for people, I don't know whether people have spent much time watching these incredibly bizarre, often hilarious hearings that Rudy Giuliani is putting on, where he continues to come up with no actual real evidence. But they do seem like Saturday Night Live skits. And this one woman who's gone viral named Melissa Carone, who I think that her main qualification was that she was trained like as one day as a contractor, and then went into in Michigan to be a ballot watcher or whatever she would. But I don't know whatever she was doing. But do we have the audio of this, Jim? Melissa Carone, who is sitting next to Rudy Giuliani, talking to Michigan legislators, and I'm sorry, the universal consensus is that she's like, smashed out of her mind. And here's the way it went.
The poll book is completely off. Completely off.
Off by 30,000?
I'd say that poll book is off by over 100,000. That poll book. Why don't you look at the registered voters on there? How many registered voters are on there? Do you even know the answer to that?
No, I guess I'm trying to get to the bottom of this here.
Zero. There's zero.
So, my question then is, if the
Guess how many? Wait. What about the turnout rate? 120%.
Let's let Representative Johnson ask his question, please.
So the poll book number. There's two things that could happen here. Either the poll book number, if ballots were counted multiple times, there's two options. Option number one is that the poll book numbers are not going to match.
They don't.
The actual. Not by thousands and thousands of votes. That's not what we see right now.
Take a look again.
Number one.
Take a look again.
Option number two is that they essentially were filling in names of people who didn't vote.
Dead people too?
So is that?
Let's
I guess,
let
is that
Representative Johnson ask his question, and then when
I
he's
thought that
done,
was his answer. Okay.
Well, I guess that's my question here is why we're not seeing the poll book off by 30,000 votes. That's not the case.
What did you guys do? Take it and do something crazy to it?
I'm just saying the numbers are not off by 30,000 votes. So
I know what
are you
I
saying
saw.
that they're filling in?
I know what I
names?
saw, and I signed something saying that if I'm wrong, I can go to prison.
Okay.
Did you?
okay, we're
I'm sorry. Somebody was saying we need to get Kate McKinnon to play her. No, you can't do it any better than that.
Get her.
And yet here we
Get
are
her.
in America in
Can we
December
get her on the
2020.
pod, Jim? Can we track her down? I feel like
Yeah,
we should get her.
get her late in the day. But here we are, in December 2020, and the American political dialogue includes this because we have this crazy ass conspiracy theorist president. Okay,
This is
on a
just
more
really quick, Charlie. Just really quick. This is on this. Like this is the. I mean, it's funny, and I just want to enjoy the humor. But the only reason why this is happening is because everybody is playing this massive nationwide game of pretend that
yeah.
there might possibly be some fraud. And this Republican guy who I have no sympathy for, who's trying to ask her questions, is trying to lead her to water and trying to like come up with how can I make the most plausible, open the door to the most plausible possibility that there might be some fraud here, and trying to be rational about it. And it's like, sorry, buddy, you bought the ticket, take the ride. You're with this lady. It's just like hundreds of thousands of dead people. You just gotta either roll with it or come clean, right? Like the whole the machinations of these people that are trying to put the intellectual sheen on this is really I take a little bit of pleasure in watching that, some masochistic pleasure.
Well, you had a tweet earlier this week. You said, it's rare in life when you are proved so definitively right. I think it was after
Right.
after the president himself tweeted out that, an attack on the governor of Georgia, saying we just cancel the election because we don't need it because we will win. It's like, okay, the president of the United States is talking about canceling elections. If you and I would have even speculated about this a year ago, people would have thought, well, now that's real derangement syndrome.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we would have had the smart people write columns about, okay, we don't need this sort of hysterical overstatement. Nothing bad is happening here. The
And even
president would
now,
never call for
Charlie, they're
canceling an
saying,
election.
"Don't worry about it. The institution held?" It's just like, could you imagine what these people would have said had Barack Obama been doing this? It's just like this is so far outside what was imaginable as
Yeah.
acceptable behavior from a president. Anyway, it's infuriating.
Okay, this is now a good segue from the fun stuff to Gabriel Sterling yesterday. Gabriel Sterling being the one of the elections officials in the Secretary of State's office in Georgia, who by now everybody I think knows who he is or what he said. He came out and gave this really impassioned speech about this has got to stop. People are going to die. These death threats have gotten out of hand. Calls out the president, calls out the senators in Georgia for not condemning all of this, and basically says, look, this is dangerous. You're attacking our democracy, but you're attacking the people who make the elections work. This could lead to terrible things. The president's response to that, of course, was to double down on the crazy, to engage in exactly the kind of rhetoric that Gabriel Sterling was saying was putting lives in danger. So let's talk about this because I know that you guys on the Next Level podcast had a debate about all of this. Gabriel Sterling is a Republican. He is a conservative Republican. He sounds like he voted for Donald Trump. He says that he intends to vote for Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue. So is it safe to say there are some people who think, screw that guy? He
Yeah,
bought the
no,
ticket, he
yeah,
should
I mean
ride the train.
that's the JVL take, which is just like okay, yeah, great, pal. Like now that this has come to your backyard, you're worried about this. The rest of us have been dealing with this for 5 years. Where you been?
Yeah.
And you're still going to vote for Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue, who are spreading all the same things you decry. So I mean, that was basically his take. And by the way, I'm
So
sympathetic to that
what was
take.
your take on that?
Yeah, I'm sympathetic to that take. I also don't, think that we should put Gabriel Sterling on Mount Rushmore or anything like that. But at the same time, it's like somebody's got to do it.
Yeah.
There's just this craving for people to speak out and say clearly enough. And it's just, since Jay Nordlinger had a good that tweet about this, which is like, have any of the Trumpers since the election come out and said, you know what, the guys, the never Trumpers really had it right on this. Like, this is just too far. Like, some of them have said this is bad what he's doing, but have any of them taken the next logical step and said enough? And so, it falls to a staffer for a mid-level, elected official in Georgia to just come out and say what freaking Ben Sass should be saying, what Liz, what Kevin McCarthy what Mitch McConnell should be saying, right? Which is like, enough of this, like enough.
Okay, so
So
yeah.
good for him, I guess. Give it,
I
send him a
I
cookie.
think so too, but again, I understand the argument, especially for those of us who've been yelling about this for the last 5 years, that you have a lot of these folks who did not seem to object when Trump was, inciting violence against protesters,
Yep.
was making up stories, was leading the chants of lock her up, or talking about beating people up, or send her back, or all of those things. They didn't have anything to say about that. But when it was them, that's when they became upset. On the other hand, okay, what it comes down to is, if we're actually going to save this democracy, if the institutions are going to hold, it is going to require people like Gabriel Sterling and Raffensperger and Governor Ducey and Governor Kemp, and however much you dislike their politics in the past, if they don't do the right thing, then horrible things are going to happen. So if we're going to turn this around, it is going to mean that people who have been wrong are willing to stand up, wrong on their politics, are willing to stand up and say, okay, yeah, we voted for these people, but we're not going to cross this line.
Yeah,
So
and I just a little thought experiment on this, Charlie,
you
while I
want to
give
talk, you
them
want to
credit.
talk about a shoot of hope, though, that a Gabe Sterling would come out and say, okay, enough of this, right?
Yeah, and this is my thought experiment on this, Charlie. It's just like, if if this election had been closer, we've all been saying this. This election had been closer, this would have been a real danger that Trump would have taken it over. And if you look at the behavior of Raffensperger and Ducey, I don't know. I mean, I feel pretty confident that they were going to hold the line on what was true, no matter what happened. And then if you compare it to those jokers from the Michigan State Legislature,
Yeah.
do you have any confidence? Like, had this, I mean, Michigan ended up not being close. Like, Trump lost by 150,000 votes. Had Michigan been a 5,000 vote margin, do you have any confidence that they wouldn't have either, found some phony fraud claims, or the state legislature wouldn't have sent in a different slate of electors? I mean, I think that this was needed, like that people that people stood up and just said, I'm going to follow the law here, and we're going to do the right thing here. And sadly, the president and the United States Senate and Congress have put these guys in this position, and so good on the people that have done it.
Yeah, I mean, it is worth remembering how terrifying the alternative would be. So here in Wisconsin, there are these various lawsuits that are asking the Wisconsin State Supreme Court to throw out the election, throw out hundreds of thousands of votes, and essentially let the legislature send Trump electors. This is not going to happen because, and I am somewhat more optimistic about that, because even the conservative justices aren't going to go that far. Even the Republicans who run the legislature, who have their own level of arrogance, are not willing to go that far. If you flip it around and imagine if this had been closer, or this had been decisive, and imagine what a world would be like where the legislators didn't have those qualms, where the secretaries of state were willing to defy the law, where judges were willing to say, okay, we found some bizarre technicality that we've never enforced before, and we're going to use that to disenfranchise hundreds of thousands of voters. Then you're in a real nightmare scenario. So there's got to be some, I think, gratitude for the people who are doing the right thing. Doesn't mean you throw them a parade. What was Jim Swift's line? Don't make them the grand marshal, but at least give them a tasteful float
Yeah.
in the parade.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, speaking of other things that are actually happening in the world here, I have no idea whether they're going to come up with a new stimulus package, whether they're going to compromise. But I think it's going to be an interesting test case about Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell, who of course famously just decided that he was going to make Barack Obama a one-term president, failed at that, but managed to slow everything down. I do think it's interesting that you have this centrist coalition which has come up with a compromise plan, so the economy doesn't fall off the cliff. The only thing that seems to stand in its way is whether Mitch McConnell just basically wants to let it all burn down. So I don't know whether you have any feel for all of that. I am, as usual, not that optimistic about their ability to get this done, but I think it's going to be an interesting indicator of what the politics of 2021 is going to look like.
Yeah. I don't see a ton of evidence that they're going to get it done in lame duck. I mean, maybe McConnell decides, I guess, that it is that he wants to not let Biden get credit for anything, right? And so it's better to cut a deal now. I think that's the only logical argument I could see for McConnell pushing it through now. But he's got big parts of his caucus, and who knows what Mitch actually thinks in the depths of his black heart. But like, he's got people in the caucus who are ready now to go back to austerity and pretending to care about debt and all that, and who aren't going to support this no matter what, and who think that the only thing to do to fix the economy is open everything up and let everybody die. I mean, there's a decent minority of the Senate caucus, for Senate Republican caucus, that's their view now. So to get it done, it does really have to be, get bipartisan votes, and just isn't going to be something that Trump is besides an errant tweet now and then pushing for. So I think that like the energy is against it unless Mitch really decides it's in his political interests to do it for the January 5th runoff, and to not give Biden a win.
Yeah, this sounds right to me. What about the president's threats to veto the defense bill over number one, the renaming of the Confederate forts, and number two, his demand that Section 230, which has nothing to do with defense at all, be repealed? That's not going to happen. If Donald Trump actually did veto the defense authorization bill, my gut sense says that the Congress would say, "Screw it, we're going to override the veto."
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's right. I don't. I mean, is he real? It's just hard to know, like, what he really, what's going on. And he hasn't
He doesn't
done.
want that
He's
kind
had
of
a
a
lot of
defeat.
threats. There's been a lot of
Yeah.
empty threats, over the last 4 years. It's like, really, this is going to be his moment to do a veto over like the fact that his feelings are hurt about like Twitter trends being Fat Don or whatever it was, like Diaper Don. I mean, I don't. Maybe it's to your point about how this is the most dangerous, period. It's like I think that there are things that you can predict about what Donald Trump's going to do. He's going to be a man child and whine and complain and send tweets, and then there's that next layer out of more outlandish acting out, and he's going to threaten to do all that, but I think at this point it's an open question how much of that, when it comes to firing Wray and the attorney general and actually vetoing military funding. I mean, if he really does think he's going to run in 2024, is he really going to veto?
Well,
It just feels.
that's the interesting thing. That's the big question, because you know that he wants to self-pardon, or he wants to pardon Rudy Giuliani, or he wants to pardon his kids. But he's got to sit down at some point and go, okay, do I want to do that? I can leave all kinds of bombs behind, but what does that mean for 2024? Oh, hey, I almost forgot, you had this big story, the biggest story in the Bulwark this week, about one of Trump's crack lawyers, Joe DeGeneva, going on Newsmax and suggesting that former cybersecurity chief Chris Krebs be taken out and shot. You were just like watching Newsmax because you're a masochist. And you were watching that, and
Well,
you were the only reporter in America to pick up the fact that DeGeneva was
I
calling for the.
was. Had I not been hate watching Newsmax, nobody would have noticed that the president's
That's so
lawyer
weird.
threatened execution on a whistleblower, somebody who spoke out, and a public servant who just spoke out and said the truth about our elections. Yeah, I look, and this is and I've got two things in this, just about how crazy our times are and how our news environment is, and one thing I think we can try to be at the Bulwark, and that I try to have as my North Star, is like, is we are not constrained by the conventions of the media, right? Where you feel like you got to cover whatever the news is that day, and you got to show, well, give the Trump side a fair shake, and blah blah blah. Like, we're not constrained by that. Like, we can just look at this with, I think, a little bit more clear eyes about what's happening, and there are some stories that are just so crazy, but because they live in this kind of uncanny valley where they seem so crazy or ridiculous, like the mainstream media occasionally will just ignore them. And I think that was true about this DeGeneva thing. People are not, for whatever reason, even though he's a lawyer for the president of the United States, the mainstream outlets do not have a beat for following this. They don't have a reporter sitting around following all the crazy things that Rudy is saying. And so stuff like this gets missed. I mean, in the before times, if a lawyer for the president of the United States threatened execution on a political foe, I mean, that would have been massive front page news for
You would think
weeks,
so.
right? There would have been hearings. But now that stuff just gets, oh, it's just Crazy Joe. And the same thing is happening about this Michael Flynn letter, which I just think we should talk about before we stop this. It's
Yeah,
like,
please.
Michael Flynn tweets and signs on to this letter that calls, along with Sidney Powell and Lynn Wood and another, I'm blanking on the other name, but another retired, I think Lieutenant Colonel. JVL wrote about him yesterday in the Triad, if you want to go find that. And
He's also a nut. Yeah.
these guys are calling for a martial law and a temporary break from following constitutional order in order to silence the media, silence big tech companies who are spreading what they say is disinformation about the fact that they've seen the truth about this fraud, and execute a coup to keep Donald Trump in power.
And
This
bring
was
the
Donald Trump's
military
national security advisor.
and bring the military in to conduct the election. So, I mean,
a re-election, is that what they called for? A re-election.
A revote. So here's the thing about Mike Flynn, who, retired general, used to be the national security advisor. He's either being rational or irrational. If he's being irrational, he's just a nut. If he's being rational, it's pure fascism, conscious fascism that he's talking about. And I understand that that's an extreme word, but what else do you call basically suspending the Constitution, declaring martial law, and bringing active duty military in to replace civilians and conducting an election? I mean, seriously.
It's Belarus.
So he's either, yes. So he's either of sound mind and body, in which case he's gone full fascist authoritarian, or he's lost his mind and it's pure insanity. I'm not sure what's actually scarier.
Thank God for that investigation. I mean, thank God that Michael Flynn was pushed out of the White House at the beginning. I mean, can you imagine, like, having the most influential national security advisor to the president being this crackpot who was on the take from Turkey and who's now calling for a military coup? I don't know. I just, again, this is like where you see this and like imagine what would be happening in another country. If during the lame duck period in Germany, like the top military liaison to Angela Merkel was saying that they should call martial law and have a crackdown and stay in power, he'd be pretty nervous about what was going on in Germany. So I mean, I think that we have a sense here, being here, of knowing that this is like really in the realm of crackpotville, and to execute a coup like this, you need like other military leaders who like you, which Michael Flynn and Donald Trump have not done a very good job of cultivating. But I mean, that should be like, there is no precedent. There is no comparison. It's not like you can say like, oh, remember the time that, Susan Rice, called for instituting a military coup after she left. There aren't examples of past national security advisors, George Shultz, doing stuff like that. This is
well,
completely.
Also, that we could be 5 minutes away from the president retweeting something like that. I mean, that he could do that. Look, the rest of the world is watching this. I know that that's a cliche, but the reality is that people in Denmark and Belgium and Belarus pay way more attention to American politics than we pay to their politics. They know how the Electoral College works. They know the ups and downs. I'm sure you get calls from reporters around the world, and it's always amazing the granular level of their knowledge. So the whole world is watching America melt down in this particular way. So for the happy talk about how well our institutions proved to be resilient, we sent a massive message about how fragile everything was here and what hypocrites we are when we lecture the rest of the world about how to run elections, when we have a president and a Republican Party that's behaved the way that it does. And by the way, the fact that overwhelmingly Republicans don't think this is a legitimate election is not a sign of success. I keep coming back to this analogy that we are the ship of state. We're still sailing along, and so the two cool for school kids are writing the piece about, hey, there was nothing to worry about, when in fact a little while back a massive torpedo below the waterline hit us, and we don't realize how much water we're taking in, and we're going to start listing in a few minutes that we don't really know how deep the damage of this is. So I mean, the Mike Flynn stuff, it's again, it is so bizarre that you have the president's lawyers calling for people to be killed. Okay, so it's a little fallout from your story about Joe
Yeah.
DeGeneva. You saw today that he's resigning under pressure from the elite Gridiron Club after an uproar over his comments suggesting a former government official should be executed. Now, you know what my main question was about that? The Joe DeVent,
Why
because
was he in the Gridiron Club in the first
yes,
place?
why was Joe DeGeneva in the Gridiron Club? What kind of standards do those guys have?
Isn't that just kind of thing where you just know somebody and pay the bills? I don't know. I never, despite being told on the internet by the Trumpers that I was, I'm just all in this for the Georgetown cocktail parties. I'm not really in that scene, so I don't have a
Well,
lot of special insight to give you on how you get into the Gridiron
well,
Club.
well, now this is cool because here's the local angle, because you
Okay.
know that I can always work Wisconsin in
I
any
do.
conversation. Okay, so the Washington Post story this morning quotes the president of the club. We were dismayed by his comments. We felt that they were, on the top of everything else, just about antithetical to what the club is about, said club president Craig Gilbert, the Washington bureau chief for the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. It's a social club. We're all about fellowship and goodwill. So apparently, they're not about actually taking your political enemies out and drawing and quartering them and having them shot at dawn.
Yeah, I mean, having all these clubs broken down though, by the time, like, how can you have goodwill with these people? You know what I mean? I think that is another, just the bad faith and the fact that, like, here's why we had to break the Joe DeGeneva story, Charlie, is because things like this, maybe not exactly threatening people to be shot at dawn, but like crazy like this, bad faith, very disgusting attacks on opponents is just standard fare now in Trump's Washington. It just is. And so without, being all like, oh, we need comity and norms, like, it has just broken institutions such as this. Like, who could you have? Like, who do you want to have in the Gridiron Club from this crowd? Do you want Kellyanne to come in there? It's just,
Yeah, is Kellyanne a member?
they're all just liars. And so it's like, how can you deal with this?
Okay.
And none of them are speaking out about Joe DeGeneva. So I mean, that's just where we've landed, unfortunately.
So one last comment about this whole, this rhetoric of violence and the danger.
Yeah.
I remain extremely concerned about it. Number one, because there's lots of crazy people with guns out there who feel that they have a Second Amendment right to show up at, say, the Michigan State Capitol and use their semi-automatic weapons to bully and intimidate people. So what could possibly go wrong? But the thing I'm really worried about is, in social media, right-wing social media. I know this is going to come as a surprise to some of our listeners. There are people who right now still think that Donald Trump is going to be president on January 21st, that when it becomes clear that he has lost this election, they're going to be shocked by this. So we haven't really totally absorbed the people who are the deepest into the fever swamps have no idea the fact that it is completely over, that it's a joke, the stuff that we've been talking about here. And it will come as they will be gobsmacked by it. And who knows how they will react when they realize that this coup has taken place, that the traitorous communist Chinese, North Koreans, Venezuelans, Marxist, socialist, corporate liberals, whatever, have taken away their president. They're really going to be very unhappy.
Yeah, and it only takes a couple. That's the thing.
Right.
It only takes a couple of them. And so the reason why I was watching Newsmax, because I've got another thing for tomorrow that's just a broader, look at what Newsmax is feeding these people. And it's hope after hope after hope. It's like, well, if the state legislatures don't overturn it, if the Supreme Court doesn't overturn it, Congress can overturn it.
Yes, right.
So
they
it's going
think this could happen.
Yeah, so I mean, there is, until the moment that Joe Biden walks in there, there is going to be this sense of hope, and I, like you said, I think that it's very reasonable to be concerned that one or a handful of these folks, could feel like they need to take things into their own hands and be a mini Kyle Rittenhouse.
Yeah, and 5 minutes ago, responsible leaders understood their responsibility not to feed the beast, not to pour the kerosene, on the dynamite here. But I don't know. That seems like a different century. So started off trying to be hopeful and everything, and here we are.
I'm
again,
here to bring the bleak, Charlie. You
just
know that.
remember the difference between hope and optimism. Optimism and hope are not the same thing. Hope requires courage, and we are nothing if not courageous at the Bulwark. Tim Miller, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Charlie. Talk soon.
And thank you for listening to today's Bulwark podcast. I'm Charlie Sykes. We will be back tomorrow, and we will do this all over again.